really good to see you.
Yeah, of course.
Love your speech when you first came in. It's awesome.
Thank you. It's good to be back in Pinellas County, and I'm always happy to be joined by our Attorney General, Ashley Moody. And we also have our Surgeon General, Dr. Joe Latipo is here. We've got a lot of people who are behind us that are joining us as well. We'll also hear from some other folks that have some personal stories. But at the end of the day, we're here to announce that we need to take action to protect Florida jobs. And we have a situation now, unfortunately, in our country where we have a federal government that is very much trying to use the heavy hand of government to force a lot of these injections. And you have a lot of folks that actually believe that that decision should be theirs, and that we believe in having basic medical freedom and individual choice, and that your right to earn a living should not be contingent upon COVID shots. Amen. And so that's what we need. Now, we were, when the vaccines came out, we worked very hard to provide it, particularly to our elderly, but we said from day one, we'll make it available for all, but we will mandate it on none, because ultimately we wanted individuals to make the determinations about what was right for them. And so you hear a lot about this OSHA mandate that's coming down the pike. That's something that I've said we're going to contest, and we will. There's also mandates that potentially could have devastating effects on the state of Florida. One is a federal contractor mandate. Anybody that contracts with the federal government, they're imposing this mandate, and that is already putting thousands and thousands of jobs in jeopardy. And so if you think about it, we have a lot of contractors in the state of Florida that help defense and space and all these key things. A lot of great employees, a lot of great Floridians are working in these things, and yet they're now getting kicked to the curb. But the companies are in a situation where if they don't comply, then they would lose out on getting any contracts, which is the basic way they do business. And so it's a really, really bad situation. So the Attorney General and we are working. Now, we want to contest that contractor mandate in court as well. We got to make sure we have the right plaintiff in terms of what we can do. A lot of these contractors probably aren't going to do it themselves because they know there'll be reprisals if they do it. But that has an impact on thousands and thousands of people in the state of Florida. So we're going to be doing that. We're also, when it comes out, going to be contesting the mandate that they're going to impose on hospitals through CMS, where they're basically saying if you don't do forced injections, then you lose Medicare, Medicaid funding. Well, none of these healthcare providers would be able to even function, particularly in a state like Florida where most of their patients are on Medicare. And so we think that's illegal, that's wrong, and so we're going to be doing that as well. And that's important what the federal government is doing, but it's not just limited to that. You have some of these businesses that are doing things that I think violate what's decent. You have some of these agencies in state government, or not state government, but local government, even though we've made very clear you can't fire people based on this, they're doing it. We have someone from Orange County Fire who's here, who's going to talk about what's happened to him. And a lot of the employers are not honoring the exemptions for religious beliefs or health concerns that are in federal law. And so we have an opportunity here to take additional action. I think we have to do it. I think we have got to stand up for people's jobs and their livelihoods. Yes. So what we're going to be doing, in addition to mounting aggressive legal challenges to federal mandates, we're also going to be taking legislative action to add protections for people in the state of Florida. And that's something that cannot wait until the regular legislative session next year. It needs to happen soon. And so we will be calling the legislature back for a special session. We want to make sure that individuals in Florida have their livelihoods and their jobs protected. And I think that this is something, when we were doing the last legislative session, it would never have occurred to me that we would be in the situation that we are with some of the insanity that's raining down right now. We took very strong action against things like vaccine passports. That was the right decision to do because we didn't want people to be having their freedom circumscribed based on showing papers. And we really nipped that whole issue in the bud here in Florida. But then now you have this where you have these aggressive potential mandates which could potentially lead to many people losing their jobs. Some have already been terminated, and we need to provide protections. One of the things that's frustrating to me is when COVID hit and we started to grapple with it, there was a fear that COVID was going to become ripe for litigation. That'd be a litigation bonanza, that someone would sue a business and say, well, someone got COVID while in your operation, therefore, and that's not how we've ever treated respiratory viruses before. It's a pathogen that's airborne. It's not anyone's fault. It's just something that unfortunately you have to deal with. But we didn't think that businesses should be getting sued over this, and so we provided probably the strongest COVID liability protection anywhere in the country very early on, and we were glad to do that, and I think that was something that allowed a lot of businesses to breathe a sigh of relief. But I must say that having done that, to now see some of those same businesses who were complaining about potential liability turn around and want to fire employees over these injections, I kind of feel like they're stabbing us in the back after we were standing up for them. And so we're going to be pursuing a number of protections for employees. First of all, if you think about it, if anyone has been forced to do an injection and has an adverse reaction, that business should be liable for that. Any damages, there's just, you have to do it because that's on them. It wasn't an individual choice. I also think this COVID liability protection that was given, the minute you go and start mandating, that liability protection is going to go by the wayside for each individual business that makes the decision to fire people or to do any of that. And I know some of them have already done it. So we're going to make sure that we beef that up. It's also the case some of these people have recently been fired, and then they're viewed as having been fired for cause, and then they're now ineligible for reemployment assistance. We're going to make sure that those are not for cause and make sure we provide people a lifeline. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't be discriminated against based on your health decisions. And so we want to provide protection for people. We want to make it clear that in Florida, your right to earn a living is not contingent upon whatever choices you're making in terms of these injections. And I think that that's going to go a long way to let people know that we have your back. Some people say, well, why don't you just issue an edict? It's not the way a constitutional system works. COVID, you had governors issuing a lot of unconstitutional edicts. We're not under a state of emergency in Florida. I don't have the authority to just dictate. That's why you need to have the legislature come in. You actually have to pass legislation. You can enshrine protections into law. We can make sure that we're looking out for folks. And here's the thing. On a principled basis, we have the responsibility to stand up for people's individual rights and individual freedom and make sure that in the state of Florida, people can make those decisions. I think it's very, very important. It's also important for us to take a stand. If we have unconstitutional mandates coming down from the federal government, we have a responsibility to fight back and defend the constitutional system, and we'll do it. But I also know, just on a very practical level, this is not something, these forced shots, this is not something that's going to be good for Florida's economy. We have a lot of folks in very key industries. We're here at the hangar because we got a lot of folks in the airlines that are back there who are absolutely instrumental in America's economy, particularly Florida's economy, because we're the #1 tourist destination in the United States. August 2021, our hotel revenue was up 11% over pre-COVID August of 2019, even though the nation as a whole was down 5%. So we really, and yes, some people drive, but most people now fly into Florida. And so we need to have these airlines functioning. Losing some of these people is not going to be good for the state of Florida. Losing nurses is not going to be good for the state of Florida. Losing police officers or firefighters is not going to be good for the state of Florida. So we have to look at, yes, a freedom, very important, constitutional government, defending the Constitution, very important, but just on a practical basis, even if none of those concerns were things that really matter to you, this is not going to work well. And I think that's why you've seen some of these big businesses back off some of these mandates, because they realize that it's not something that is ultimately sustainable. And here's the thing. There are a lot of people that are fighting these mandates inside these businesses. I bet you some of them are vaccinated. They just, out of principle, do not want to have to show. Then there's others who probably aren't opposed to doing it, but they want it to be their individual choice, and they don't want it to be heavy-handed brought down. Because it's not a free choice. If you say, get a shot or lose your job, that's not a free choice for a lot of people, because their livelihood's hanging in the balance. So there's a lot of things that are really, really important. And so I think if we're able to have the legislature come in, and we'll announce the precise dates. It'll be in November. I'm going to work with President Simpson and Speaker Sprowls to come in, to make sure that we're providing protections for people, to make sure that we're making sure, clarifying, we're in litigation on some of this stuff where we shouldn't be, to make sure, particularly these government agencies that have not followed the law, to make sure that we hold them accountable very quickly if they're firing people. I think it's something that needs to be done now. I don't think you can wait until next year, because I think a lot of these deadlines are coming up between now and the end of the year, where some of these people are going to get fired. And quite frankly, this would have been something we would have done last legislative session. If I honestly thought this would be something that would get this far, we would have made it a big priority. But I didn't think that this was something, because even Biden, remember, he said we would never mandate it. Remember he said that? We would never mandate it. That's what he said. And now he's in a situation where he's flip-flopped on that and is now doing. Fauci said you never mandate originally. Fauci said you can't mandate. Now Fauci is saying to mandate it. And so these guys are flip-flopping on this, and I think it's wrong. Now, as we bring the legislature back to provide protections for Floridians for their jobs, I think it's also important that we fortify parents' rights related to some of the things that we've been seeing going on. We've been winning these cases in court, and we'll win in the First Circuit DCA with respect to the Parents' Bill of Rights. But if you look at how that was drafted, it wasn't drafted with the idea that you would have subordinate government agencies just totally flout the law. The ability to enforce it, the teeth need to be strengthened. And so what I'm going to ask the legislature to do, yes, focus on protecting jobs, focus on making sure people's livelihoods are protected first and foremost. But while we're here, make sure that you're fortifying the Parents' Bill of Rights. I mean, we have a situation now in Florida where individual parents have not been provided their rights in a handful of counties. Most counties have done it. Pinellas has done a great job. You look around, we now in Florida have the lowest per capita COVID rate in the continental United States, okay? But that went from being at the top of a wave when all the schools came back in. Right as that was happening, all the colleges, we had sports stadiums full, all this stuff, and it's gone down 90%. And you have places like Pinellas in most counties where parents had the ability to make decisions about forcible masking or no masking. And then you had some others that forced masking and didn't let the parents make the decision. And it's gone down regardless. It's gone down everywhere. And so we know that. We know that that's what the data is telling us. So we need to make sure that we're doing it. I was very, very saddened and angry to be in Brevard County yesterday and hear a father talk about his young daughter with Down syndrome who has an exemption going into class, and they're forcibly tying a mask on her face with Down syndrome. That is wrong. And so the question is if these folks are not following the law, those parents need to have recourse. They need to go in and they need to be able to sue. They need to be able to get relief. And the perpetrators need to pay for their attorney's fees when they're doing it. We've got to hold people accountable. And it's like, I could sit here and say I tried to put great young judge on the Florida Supreme Court, a lady named Renata Francis, and we did it. We were about to do it. Someone sued over it, and there was like a procedural issue. I thought I was right. It went, and we lost in front of the Florida Supreme Court. So what am I going to do? I mean, like, we either have a system of government or we don't. And so we did. We made a different decision. Another great judge, and we move on. But you have some of these people that they think that they're a law unto themselves. They don't think the parents should have a voice, and they don't think the interests of the child are more superior to whatever their political interests are. And we're going to make sure that we get that right-sized and make sure that people have the ability to defend parents and defend kids. So I think those two things will be very, very significant. But before I say anymore, I wanted to bring in some folks who will be able to discuss about some of the issues that they're having to deal with, because sometimes you just hear about mandate and force this and that, and it's almost like the folks who are concerned about this, people don't want to talk about, or they don't want to give them the ability to explain kind of where they're coming from on some of this.